everyone, it's your favorite OBGYN, Dr. Jen here, and here's what I want for us to talk about. So you had your annual well woman checkup, your pap smear came back, and your doctor told you it's abnormal, and you were freaking out. You don't know what to do. Well, that's what we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna break it down and explain everything for you guys. So here we go. What causes pap smear abnormalities is something called HPV, or human papilloma virus. Human papilloma virus is a sexually transmitted condition. It can lead to changes on the cells of the cervix that can lead to abnormal pap smears, or it can also lead to genital warts. Getting the HPV vaccine is also known as Gardasil. It's really important. You can get it all the way from age 9 to age 45. So please talk to your OBGYN about that, or your primary care doctor or your pediatrician, and get vaccinated. So pap smears are for cervical cancer screening. So if a pap smear does show an abnormality, it does not mean that you have cervical cancer. It just means that there are changes that need to have further evaluation to ensure that more severe changes don't take place. Pap smears start at the age of 21, and they typically end at the age of 65. And of course, depending on if you had some abnormalities, etc., you may need to get them past the age of 65, but they typically do not start before the age of 21. From the age of 21 to 29, you get your pap smear every 3 years. And again, this is if everything's normal. From the age of 30 to 65, they're every 5 years. So many of my patients think that, why am I not getting it every year? What has changed? These are the guidelines, and this is based off of ASCCP guidelines. All right, so pap smears, again for cervical cancer screening, they can be everything from normal, and I just say N for normal, but this actually means no intraepithelial lesion or malignancy, to all the way to high-grade changes. And I just say the high-grade changes for the H, but that means high-grade squamous intraepithelial lesions. And then you can have everything in between. And this is called atypical squamous cells of undetermined significance. You can have something in between the in-betweens. So this is low-grade changes, L for low-grade, and that's low-grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. Or you can have something that's called this, called ASK-H, but it's atypical squamous cells, cannot rule out high-grade changes. So typically, if you have any abnormality that takes place, the next step would be for us to do a closer look at the cervix. And when I say any abnormality, the guidelines get kind of complicated. So not every abnormality that takes place requires for you to get this procedure done, which is called a colposcopy, but some do. And again, I would advise that whoever collected your pap smear, or if they're going to refer you to OBGYN, they will be able to explain this in further detail based off of what abnormality you specifically had. So if a colposcopy were needed, what is done during this procedure is we take a closer look at your cervix. We place a vinegar solution on the cervix that allows abnormalities to kind of pop out in this area called a squamocolumnar junction. So abnormalities pop out. We would then take a biopsy of those abnormalities, and then we send it off to the laboratory. The laboratory then lets us know if we have low-grade changes, and those low-grade changes, cervical intraepithelial lesion, 1, or if you have high-grade changes, which is called CIN 2 or 3. Typically, if you have low-grade changes, what's done next is that you have your pap smear repeated in a year. So we go back to this step. If you have high-grade changes, these changes are not evaluated over, it's not going to be, I would say, a short period of time, but over an extended period of time, this could then turn into a cervical cancer. So what is typically done then is we take a look at your cervix again. So let's imagine this picture right here, but now we're looking at it sideways. So this is taking a look at that cervix again, sideways. And what is done is that a portion of the cervix is shaved off to take out all of the bad cells. So what really matters in this diagram is that this edge, this is what we shaved off, and this is what's left in your body. Those edges connect, right? So if these edges show that there is positive, still abnormal cells there, what that means is that what's left in your body could still turn into a significant abnormality if this isn't managed over an appropriate period of time. So what then could be done is that you can have a repeat procedure, and this procedure that I'm mentioning is called a LEEP procedure. So loop electrosurgical excisional procedure. So that LEEP procedure can then be repeated, and again we look at these edges, and if the edge is negative, that means that what's left in your body is typically negative, and what's then done is that pap smear is repeated in 6 months. So I hope this diagram makes a bit of sense, and I kind of just want to recap. Pap smears are for cervical cancer screening. They start at the age of 21 and they end at the age of 65 typically. This is if nothing abnormal has taken place. Pap smears from 21 to 29 are every 3 years. Pap smears from 30 to 65 are every 5 years, and then included in that you do HPV testing. Before the age of 30, you typically don't do the HPV testing. And this is again, if everything is normal. HPV leads to changes on the pap smear, and HPV can be prevented by getting Gardasil, which is a vaccine that you can get from the age of 9 all the way to 45. Pap smears, if they're abnormal, can lead to people needing to get a colposcopy done. And if your colposcopy shows high-grade changes, depending on your age, when you are a younger age, you typically don't do a LEEP procedure. But depending on your age, a LEEP procedure can be done to remove those high-grade abnormal cells that, if not managed appropriately over an extended period of time, can lead to cervical cancers. So again, as I made mention, please see your OBGYN to talk about your specific pap smear abnormalities, because depending on what you have, the algorithm may determine that you need to have a different step take place. But this is sort of a general schematic of how things are done. So I hope that my explanation makes a lot more sense now. And again, this is sort of a general schematic or explanation of what an abnormal pap smear looks like, what are the typical next steps. But again, I would advise that you contact your local OBGYN, and if you're in my area, come check me out, and we can go into specifics on what your specific pap smear abnormality is and what the next steps of actions can be. But again, this is sort of a general schematic of the next steps that take place. So thank you guys so much, and until the next one, bye.